Chatterbox, N8 Dev, M in Space, Icoso. Not long ago, these 4 devs did a game jam in harmony. Then, everything changed when Madbook attacked. Nothing changed really, I just joined in. Hello there, I'm Madbook, and I usually make game dev videos on design theory as well as devlogs, or some combination of the two. But recently I was invited to take part in a game jam with a few other people. I hadn't done a game jam for a few months, so I thought, yeah, why not, seems fun. However, this would be a bit different to the normal format we're generally used to with game jams. You see, instead of everyone making a game and then everyone judging everyone else's game, this group of people would be making a game for the jam as contestants, and these people would act as judges for the games that the contestants created. You'll be hearing a bit more from them later on this video. This also wasn't just a typical 48-hour or weekend game jam either. Instead, every contestant was told to pick any 7 days across the month of March to work on their game. A system of trust that worked really well because, well, we trusted each other and all wholeheartedly believed in subscribing to our respective channels, as well as liking the videos if you like them. In fact, the only normal thing about this game jam was that it had a theme. So if you didn't guess from the intro or the video title or the thumbnail, the theme for this jam was the elements. Themes are one of the most exciting things about these events, and a good theme like this can just set you on a path of creative carnage you didn't know you had in you. Luckily for me, this theme just worked, and resulted in one of my most unique creations yet. I don't think I've ever made anything quite like it before. So, elements. When I think of elements, I think of arrays. No, just kidding. I think of earth, wind, and fire. And water. I feel like there's just something inherently fascinating about the elements as a system. Like the elemental typing in Pokemon games and the elemental powers in a TV show like Avatar. The good Avatar. So I decided my game would be based on the Japanese Godai of elements. Earth, wind, fire, water, and void is also thrown in there as an extra little twist too. So what about the game? Well, for a while now I've been obsessed with the idea of deck builder games. They have that slightly nostalgic card game feeling from my childhood, but feel incredibly modern and fresh when used to build a video game. Computers can just keep track of stuff that is really hard to track as a human, and can also provide visual and dynamic effects that just don't exist in real life card games. Luck Be a Landlord is one of these that has really caught my eye recently. I love how simple and easy the game is to play, but how much complexity it brings through decision making and planning your build. So I was going to make a deck builder game that's centered around the elements to provide different strategies and combos. But I didn't want to just copy the gameplay of Luck Be a Landlord. So I did some more thinking and was reminded of a pretty bad pinball mobile game I played the other week. After thinking of this, I decided that pinball would form the basis of the actual gameplay for the game. So with all these inspirations and themes in mind, we have finally arrived at a full idea for my game jam entry. A game that I'm calling Curse of the Pinball Wizard. A roguelite deck building game where the cards you pick let you place pieces into the pinball machine. These pieces consist of a variety of different bumpers, paddles, special items, and balls. Each card you pick has an element associated with it which adds to the number of element tokens. Each card will benefit from these tokens to varying degrees and will continue to power up and combo with the other pieces as the relevant elements are picked more and more. Some cards would also have some special effects based on their element, like these flames, some rain, gravity warping, wind blasting, and so on. These can all lead to both positive and negative outcomes depending on where you place things and what interacts with what. And I don't know about you, but to me this just seemed like one of those glorious times an idea just comes together. But how did we make this glorious game idea? Well, I'm glad you asked, but I don't want to bore you, so let's quickly look at what I think are the most interesting and important bits that went into making this game. Before doing anything else, the absolute first thing I did was to pick a colour palette, which I would rigidly stick to for the whole jam. I tried to pick one that would have enough different colours for each of the different elements I was talking about earlier. Now, normally I have very little artistic talent, but doing this really helped me achieve a cohesive look for the game. This was my first time using a colour palette for a game jam, and it really did look much cleaner than any game I've made before this, so I think it worked really well. I also used a little technique called Sprite stacking. It's something I'm using for my long-term project called Project Drifter as well, and I really loved the style and aesthetic it gives. It provides a sort of fake 3D effect by stacking layers of 2D sprites on top of each other that move depending on where the camera's current location is. Using this technique does require a little more effort and thinking to get right, which is why I mainly stuck to simple geometric shapes for this game jam, but I think the results are still really visually interesting because of the stacking. I made it so that each of the objects in the game used GameMaker's built-in physics system, which is based on the Box 2D framework. It's not perfect, but it's more than suitable for the scope of this jam that just relies on basic movement and collisions. Thankfully, it didn't take long at all to get the ball falling through the level and bouncing off the walls. With these basic elements set up, I needed a plan for how the gameplay loop would actually function. To do this, I planned a state machine to manage the flow of the game. I observed Luck be a landlord's workflow for some inspiration and sketched out this idea for my game. The general idea for a state machine is that when a new state is reached, the relevant actions are shown to the player. You only let certain things happen in your game when it's in the correct state. I did a quick and dirty implementation of this state machine. It was just a simple enum that I could use to freely change the state of the game whenever I wanted. While this is highly flexible, I didn't write any code to stop me from accidentally breaking the intended flow of the state machine. This meant I had to take extra care that I swapped between the correct states in the correct order and at the right time. But having it thoroughly planned out beforehand helped me keep this in check. So with this added, we can technically play the game. It goes like this. Start at the menu. As well as the standard settings options here, you can also change the game to a few different stages or layouts. Pick the one you think is the most interesting and then hit start game. Drop the ball into the mana machine. If it gets to the bottom, you get bonus mana and a selection of cards from the card shop. If you run out of time before the ball reaches the bottom, your ball is destroyed and you're forced to buy a new one from the shop. No other upgrades will be available to you if this happens, just the balls. Back in the regular shop, the cards you can choose from will either have a stat effect, like adding more time to the timer, or provide you with a new mana generating piece for the mana machine. This helps you generate more mana in future drops. You might be asking though, why do you want to generate more mana? And that's a good question. Here's an answer. You are a wizard and you have a mana draining curse that steals an increasing amount of mana after every 8th ball drop. Because of this curse, you need to keep adding to your magic mana machine and make it as efficient as possible so you can drop your magic balls into it for more and more mana to outlive the curse for as long as possible. It's a simple gameplay loop, but I think it's quite effective. So the gameplay loop was looking pretty cool, but if this game was really going to work, there would need to be a good enough variety of cards with all the different elements and combos to make it interesting. We needed to add more content to the game. To do this, I made this hacky in-code database that let me easily add new cards, effects, and mana generating pieces to the shop. Normally I would use a more robust and editable storage method, but this would do for the sake of saving time in a game jam. So I got to work making a bunch of different items for this game. There's a ball for every element, with each one having its own unique effect. There's a bunch of different bumpers that scale with element tokens, as well as some cool combo ones that take advantage of multiple different elements if the conditions are set up right for them. There are unique effects that help boost your builds or change the way the game is played, like a black hole that pulls things in towards it or a fan that blows things away. There's also a basketball hoop that lets you dunk for more mana that gives you even more mana if the ball you dunk is on fire. All of this and a little bit more was about what I could manage across 2 days of development time. I ended up finishing the game jam with a total of 24 different cards that can appear in the shop. I wanted to add more, but I felt that this was pretty good for the time I had in the game jam. I wanted to make the game more exciting though. I wanted players to really get that hit of dopamine when the ball bounces off the bumpers. I thought I could achieve this through 3 main things: making the bumpers wobble, squash and stretch if they get doinked, making the bumpers perform a nice pinging sound when they get doinked, hoping the players would combo the bumpers in groups for that crazy multi-doink dopamine-filled gameplay. I also spent like a whole day trying to get the UI to move cleanly for this game. I wanted every action for the player to be clear and for all of the transitions and menus to be satisfying to use. Just look at that card shop swish in from the side. Beautiful. This also meant adding hover click menus. If you don't find hover click menus satisfying when you do this, then I don't know what else I could possibly do for you. This is peak UI satisfaction. Speaking of clicks and sounds, I wanted to try something a bit different with the sound effects beyond only using BFXR like I normally do for game jams. In my game, when the player gets the ball to the return zone, they get the bonus mana and any item can appear in the shop. If the ball gets destroyed before getting there, they're forced to buy a new ball instead of getting to go to the normal shop, and they don't receive any bonus mana. Although I had added text to try and make this clear, I also used sound effects to really reinforce and hammer this point home. When the ball is successfully returned, the player is cheered by a crowd sound effect, letting them know that they did a good thing. If the ball is destroyed, a booing sound effect is played, letting the player know that something bad happened. Making sure that the audio and visual feedback that you're giving to the players matches up correctly sounds really obvious, but is something I forget to do all of the time. I added a last-minute tutorial that is okay. It's boring, but it does explain how to play the game. If I were to make a full game out of this, I would definitely do this part differently. Finally, I mashed up some music using my basic LMMS skills. I do have a tutorial on how I normally do this in this way, so if you want to check that out, feel free. After I slapped this into the game on a loop, I was basically done. The game was done. Now it was time to face the judges. So these lovely judges were kind enough to provide some feedback on our games, and I do genuinely appreciate feedback like this, so be sure to check them out if you haven't already because they make some amazing stuff themselves. First we'll kick off with Zed from Let's Talk Game Design.
An absolutely superb interpretation of the theme. I've never seen a roguelike deck builder pinball game before, and I never thought I'd have particularly wanted to play one until I got to this. I think the systems would naturally need some refinement and balance, because I managed to break it quite quickly, but as a base for potential growth after this, it's unsurpassed. Also just a truly brilliant, genuinely exciting and original theme interpretation. One of the most innovative games I think I've played in any game jam.
And this is why feedback is so important. Not only was Zed incredibly nice about my game, which was very kind of him, he also helped me to know the strengths of my game and also highlighted some pretty glaring bugs that I completely missed when I was making it. It's having this type of feedback that is completely vital for iterating on your projects and improving your game dev skills. Next, we have Dakota Vaughen with a few gameplay highlights, as well as some general ratings for each aspect of the game.
Dude, this one? Oh, and I can place it. Oh, this is cool. I like this. I have Curse of the Pinball Wizard. I gave it a theme, 10 out of 10. The theme with the elements works really well in conjunction with gameplay, which I put gameplay as 9 out of 10. Let's see. Okay. Yes! Yes! I hit the wind one! Yeah, we have a lot of wind, so we need more wind stuff. The way that the elements get more powerful, the more of those elements you have, works really well with not only the theme, but also the gameplay. Those really mesh well together, I personally think. For visuals, I gave it a 7 out of 10. Boing. Boing. Oh, I boinged off of it again. Yes! They weren't really anything too noteworthy, but they were solid. They were interesting with the layered pseudo 3D effect. I did think that was interesting. However, some components were really visually similar, and it kind of muddied up things. For example, the most notable instance of this is the basic ball and the basic bumper or bouncer or whatever it was called. I forget what it was called. But those two things looked really similar to me, and it was a little hard to distinguish them. Oh, I can put this under here. I didn't even realize that. Now I can get more stuff. Oh yeah, this is epic. Okay. Aha, I'm not gonna die yet! Audio, I gave it a 7 out of 10. Wasn't really anything too noteworthy, but it wasn't annoying. So, but yeah, overall, I give it a 9 out of 10.
And again, we can see why feedback really helps. As more people play the game, I can become increasingly aware of its strengths and of its weaknesses too. Another cool thing about this is that Dakota pointed out completely different bugs and problems to Zed from Let's Talk Game Design. Having different people playtest your game is a really good thing. Pay attention to the feedback, see what they have to say, and it will give you a really good idea on what you can improve on next. And while we're on the topic of feedback, you should definitely play Curse of the Pinball Wizard and check out the other contestants too, who have all also made videos on their respective games. All relevant links for 5 really fun games and 7 amazing channels are in the description for you to check out and enjoy. This whole event was really fun, so subscribe, like and comment your thoughts. I'd love to do more of this. Great group of people and great games, so what isn't there to enjoy? Follow me on Twitter if you like that sort of thing, join me on Discord if that's your jam, and yeah, until next time, goodbye.
But overall pretty good. I like it.